Hello? Oh, it's so loud. Um, Hi, everyone. It's really great to see all of you here. There was, yeah, definitely been a funny time, so I'm really thankful for these opportunities to be in person. I'm Raymond Boisjoli. I'm an assistant professor here at the School for Contemporary Arts at SFU. And I want to begin by offering a territorial acknowledgement. Like, here we are, like in the traditional territories of the Hunkaminam and Squamish-speaking peoples of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. So I think it's really important in terms of thinking about like our relationship to this issue, and a lot of our speakers' work tonight like speaks to what it means to not only engage in this in sort of like a critical way, but to think about like what are the material means through which we might actually like think about that relationship. So I think it's definitely something we should carry forward, and it's not something that simply gets spoken at the beginning. It's something that we necessarily need to like carry with us. So I would like to thank Michael Audain and the Audain Foundation for their generosity in funding this. They make this Visual Artists in Residence program possible, the Audain Visual Artists in Residence. This program forms a central element of our studio and seminar classes. It happens regularly in the fall and spring. And we hope that these talks will not only be sort of informative, but that they'll be formative of a shift in thinking and discourse for the SCA and the wider community. And I definitely feel that in terms of like knowing Jackson and having the opportunity to talk with him, knowing sort of like the contribution he can make in terms of shift in thinking around sort of discourse and contemporary art. So Jackson is a multidisciplinary artist from Tlingit territory, living and working between what are currently called Alaska and New York. So he holds an MFA in visual arts from Columbia University and was a recipient of a 2017 Native Arts and Cultures Foundation Mentor Artist Fellowship. He's a core contributor to New Red Order, a public secret society with Adam and Zach Khalil. With the interdisciplinary network of informants, they co-produce video performance and installation works that examine and aim to shift obstructions to Indigenous growth. And they've shown widely, including at the Alaska State Museum, Anchorage Museum, Artist Space, Burke Museum, eFlux, Haus der Kulturen der Welt Berlin, Images Festival, amongst many others. And I also want to thank my colleagues in the SCA and my colleagues in the visual arts area. Kathy Slade, the organizer of the Audain Visual Arts in Residence, Sabina Bitter, Elspeth Pratt, and Judy Radul have all been very supportive, and I really appreciate the opportunity to work with them here. And want to thank the SCA staff, including Jillian Hannemeyer, Brady Cranfield, and also want to thank Daryl and Zoo for the technical support this evening. So now I'll hand it over to Jackson, and thanks.
Thank you, Raymond. And I just want to echo the thanks for hosting me here. I know that the term host can be a contested term, and maybe that's an opportunity to continue thinking about this both tonight and beyond. I'll see if I can switch over. Okay. So I'm Jackson Paulus, Indigenous to Southeastern Alaska, or what is claimed as Tlingit Audain, Tlingit land. I'm Tlingit on my father's side, which in a matrilineal society already imposes a partiality or a lack. So even with such an apparently strong connection, this necessitated and allowed for an adoption into the Daklawadi clan from Klukwan. I'm also partial, representing New Red Order today, as Raymond mentioned, a public secret society dedicated to examining desires for indigeneity. I work alongside many, but especially Ojibwe filmmakers and artists Adam and Zach Khalil. And we work in what many currently call New York and Brooklyn, Lenape-Hoking, which has always been a place of multiple Indigenous movements and claims. So New Red Order is that public secret society facilitated by us as core contributors, but we work with a rotating and expanding cast of informants, accomplices, with an aim toward rechanneling desires for indigeneity. Coming out of the recognition that in our current course of existential, environmental, and ethical catastrophe, desires for indigenous epistemologies increase, and enterprising settlers labor to extract this understanding as if it were a natural resource. So, from what might be an indigenous perspective, if that can be said, this of course contributes to re-romanticization, commodification, appropriation, and erasure. However, as one learns to take these seriously, if they are to be taken seriously, the avoidance of excessive desire toward indigeneity can also trigger inaction. So I come from Ketchikan, which apparently is the territory of the improved order of the Red Men. I worked carving alongside my father. Apologies for the composite view here. It's an older slide. This was the kind of work that I was making growing up behind boatloads of tourists coming into native corporation tours for tourists who came in on cruise ships through Alaska. This was the kind of work that I aspired to when I was growing up as a teenager, hoping to produce what I now term a kind of neoclassical Tlingit art. Aspirations toward whatever might be termed quality, of course that term is variable. At the same time, I was attempting to remove references that I thought might be overdetermining or limiting apprehensions to or interest in Native art. At the same time that it was subject to excessive interest from those who came and were attracted to the place, the connection to the people and the land. So removing references to clan crest imagery, which was, alongside histories of many who had attempted to work toward levels of abstraction with regard to what some call formline. Based on these projects, Robin Wright contacted me at the Burke Museum, and I was commissioned to carve, but what I provided was not perhaps what they had accepted. However, with a draft of a lengthy prolepsis in which I aimed to endeavor why I was wanting to use this piece, which was, I'll just elaborate a little bit on the piece. The original piece was a house post, or a Cape Fox house post, that was repatriated to those to whom it was deemed wrongfully taken 100 years prior. And I was commissioned along with my father to create a pair of house posts to replace them. What some have called propatriation or promatriation, the idea that you give back to the museum a replacement for what had been repatriated, to maintain that ongoing kind of relationship of attempted reciprocity. In this case, I decided not to return a replication of the piece and to instead attempt to introduce a disjuncture through formal means, but also link it to the content. The story of this particular clan was of a man who married a bear that was eaten by his bear children for having gone back to attempt to help his former human wife and children. So I had been thinking about this analog between that story and the disruption to culture due to those objects being taken in the first place. Here's a detail. It was created out of resin. I only used I was supposed to use a log that was donated by Sea Alaska Native Corporation. I instead sliced out the core of the wood and used it as a flat panel for this piece. A few of my other ventures into attempting to reconcile myself with a carving practice were my more recent engagement later on with this William Seward pole. William Seward was the man who was Abraham Lincoln's Secretary of State, and he facilitated the purchase of Alaska in like 1867. And then later on went to visit Alaska and was named the first, by some, the first tourist to Alaska. He had gone to kind of see what he had been responsible for purchasing, and along the way encountered a few different clans up and through Southeast Alaska, and apparently was thrown parties for which he did not reciprocate. Chances are he didn't really know what was being expected of him. So a shame poll was created. There's a Lincoln poll on the side that's debatable. People still debate whether or not the Abraham Lincoln poll is also a shame poll. But the shame poll was created for William Seward to erect in his honor, indicating that the debt had not yet been paid. So this was the first iteration. This here was the second iteration, which disintegrated before my eyes when I was in Alaska in 2017. And since I had been working there during that time, they had asked that I make a replacement. I was a little reluctant, but due to the nature of the story, it became something that interested me, and also a way that I could kind of contribute or pass on, have people work with me to transfer some of the carving experience. So eventually this was erected, little image of it here. William Seward. I'd been also asked to participate in other carving activities along the way. There's a recent example. However, I still find myself in this place of, increased Native presence, but also a sense of erasure, misunderstanding, loss. And I began to wonder what this was all about. I'd kind of, for me, this had kind of been a public secret, this Improved Order of the Red Men, this idea that it had been a fraternal organization. But I didn't really understand until later when I had the opportunity to go in for a dance party, to see their paraphernalia and realize that they were people who created little cellophane fires, dressed up as Native, and enacted some kind of ceremony of which I was not too cognizant of, but was curious. I looked further into the organization and found that this was, this is a certificate naming the lineage back to the 1800s from the Sons of Liberty, who claimed responsibility for the Boston Tea Party, that is, dressing up as Mohawk, throwing tea into the harbor, considered one of the foundational acts of the formation of US identity, as distancing themselves from the British. I began to think more about how this foundational act of playing Indian, as articulated by Philip Deloria, was kind of manifest and persistent, and even if it wasn't shown in overt form, was kind of an underlying desire to feel at home here, to want to become Native, which required the extinguishment, displacement, silencing of Native voice. This is a little Edward Curtis. We're still trying to figure out who Koskimo is. But as I'm thinking, I had perhaps an excessive interest, excessive desire to know more about George Hunt, who was a facilitator of this individual, Franz Boas, who had been lauded for producing anti-racist thought, but was also involved in whatever the production of knowledge he was creating in the removal of some of those objects from their communities, as well as having it be necessary to play Indian in order to reconstruct the cultures so that they would not be lost. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead. This is perhaps a non sequitur, but representative of the desire to remove oneself from that excessive, overdetermined representation, while also try to think of what core features of the movement or characteristics of the form that were not yet articulated by those who had already come before, as well as attempt an escape and try to negotiate for myself what the freedom from such overdetermination might be. At the same time, imagining some instance where we could partake in the idea that it might be possible to recuperate that desire, even if excessive, and channel it in some way where it might give information to Indigenous people. As Native people were often called upon to become informants for anthropologists and others, we asked, how might non-Indigenous people, as well as other Indigenous people, become informants for the production of Indigenous knowledge that resists, at least partially, extraction? Okay, so this might get a little loud if it works.
Gonna break it down for you once more. Ready for this one? It's just to go crazy when the sun goes down, and all that I need is for you to be my baby. When the sun goes down.
Okay, so arriving at from instances where the representation of Native people occurs at the outset, or most prevalently or pervasively through those heightened overrepresentations that consist of an active and excessive flattening. How do you come back from that? What is required? I don't know the answer, but it was a question. How could that be recuperated? This film still does not hold the answer, but is from a short video piece, Culture Capture 001, that arose in 2017 around the same time as my first collaboration with Adam and Zach Khalil. The Violence of Civilization Without Secrets, which examined the case of the exhumation and fight for the return of the Kennewick Man. This is available online for free if you have time later on. This case involved attempts by non-native scientists, those in mainstream media, and separatist white supremacist groups to call him their own, as evidence that those of European descent might have been here first. We were confronted with the persistence of the desire to feel at home here and the ways in which sympathy with native concerns can become entangled with contributing to their erasures and replacement, which involves in a most first contending with moving through the flattened residues of representation left in the wake of the removal of native belongings from their homes alongside and with native people from their land. Where native informants work with anthropologists in what some have called complicit ways, assisting with the transfer of belongings to circulate or get locked up outside their communities, helping to capture, to record knowledge so that it is saved or salvaged, then removed. So that excessive desire toward native people helped contribute to their erasure. The desire to salvage was concomitant and bound up in that erasure. But what might it mean to embody that excessive desire as perhaps necessary in order to eventually move through, with, and beyond, through the problematics of salvaging mentalities? This is at the American Museum of Natural History, where every non-European group is contiguous with those of early humans. So here in this image, initiates of the performing arm of the New Red Order continue through a hall in the American Museum of Natural History, through a 100-year-old exhibit that will soon close for renovation. It's now closed. The newer hall is expected to be forthcoming within the next, I don't know, year or so. It's been delayed. The museum presents, preserves, and frames culture while being physically removed from the life and context of the cultures depicted. Over 5,000 Tlingit objects are contained within its vaults in New York City, more than in the region of Southeast Alaska, and among tens of thousands of others of the Northwest Coast. The camera moves through other collections, other institutions, the Metropolitan Museum, the Museum of the American Indian in Bowling Green in New York. But meanwhile, the figures aim to be inspired, to explore the desire to capture poses, to invert salvage ethnography, while investigating and enacting cultural property as manifestations of the other. And in doing so, they embody and participate in the fantasy of removal as a creative act. I apologize for my late warning about the stroboscopic imagery, which I think persists throughout the duration of this evening. As we continue, we ask how we might move with and through proxy, with acknowledgement that the weight of history has led to proliferations where a predominant representation of Native people might be in plain Indian or pretending to become Indian or dressing up as Native people. So our work as the NRO grapples with our role as Indigenous artists who accept and reconfigure the role of the informant while working within settler colonial institutions, often as consultants for proper protocol, which do include territorial acknowledgements. This was a component of this engagement with the Whitney Museum in 2018, the savage philosophy of endless acknowledgement. In this case, we were asked to provide input into a territorial acknowledgement, an important endeavor, but one that can also contribute to the institution feeling like they've done the work, or the moments when the acknowledgement is performed, they get to become native. So how can we amplify the agency of the informant rather than capitulate completely to compromise positions where we're helping non-Indigenous people extract information from our communities in non-reciprocal ways? In this instance, we employed the idea of placing the acknowledgement on our event page, thus being the first time before the arms race for territorial acknowledgements in around 2017. I just want to add that New York was way behind, attempting to catch up. When we found this an opportunity to insert a kind of problematicity or a wedge or an irritant into the easy acceptance of acknowledgements, partly due to conversations with friends here. We employed the idea of, so this was the first time that it was going to be in written form. It was important for us to tie this to a commitment, which is not excessive. It reads, the Whitney Museum of American Art acknowledges that its building at its address is built on unceded Indigenous land, specifically the territory of Lenape. As a Museum of American Art, Whitney recognizes the continual displacement of Native people by the United States and is committed to working to dismantle the ongoing effects of this colonial legacy. This passed through. We were, I guess, somewhat fortunate. But in days leading up to the event, there was question that arose when it went to press as to the feasibility or possibility of this language remaining. We ended up holding to that. If the acknowledgement was removed or altered, we request that the name of the event be changed to the Savage philosophy of vanishing acknowledgement. So for now, the language persists as a residue, perhaps a promissory note, a signal that more work needs to be done. Meanwhile, what would it take to get an A for acknowledgement? How can we evaluate? Can the value, the currency of the rating be harnessed or channeled? This was a part of the video work that was in that performance event. Here, the native. This was a staged dialogue between the Dutchman and the New York City Seal and a genericized Lenape figure performed by non-native Jim Fletcher, who we had been employed with earlier at Artist Space in 2017, at an event in which he explained plain Indian while dressing up in native garb, and then apologized for it in an improvised apology later on. So in this instance, we performed, we had Jim Fletcher, who in a reverse Brando stood in for us as a host or accomplice or proxy to perform that education feat for us so that we didn't have to. We acknowledge those representations of those who are continually erased, and that the erasure can happen through reproduction of imagery, everywhere but invisible, setting the stage and secret stage theory for replacement. If we recognize this extractive capacity of having to explain, inform, and raise awareness of communities that may not be our own, that we may have shared concerns, we also felt the potential to harness the pronouncement of words by others, which could incite further change. So, give it back. We acknowledge ourselves as informants, complicit, a bit unclean, and enjoin others to inform with us, with rapport, to engage in a kind of reciprocal relationship. We examine, ask, what are the possibilities for acknowledgement? How can it really be done? What would it really take? What can it do? And if the possibility of actual decolonization, the rematriation of all Indigenous objects, land and bodies, seems ultimately inconceivable, verging on absurdity, how can welcome become warning to embrace a kind of magical thinking, often described as savage? But can we employ that and move towards seeming impossibility, towards crimes against reality, where discourse deploys forces? So what is a decolonial act, and how long would it take? Here's an installation view of New Red Order Never Settle, which was a staging ground and recruitment zone for informants and accomplices to enlist. This was the Toronto Biennial, curated by Candace Hopkins and Tyrone Bastian, 2019. This was the first public screening of the ongoing recruitment film, Never Settle, which is an in-progress initiation video, meaning that it's not finished. And since the pandemic, we've had rarely had the opportunity to screen it. So I've cut together a few excerpts of this, and I'll warn that it does take some time, but I'd like to pass it over to the video now, and I'll come back.
I'm Jim Fletcher. Award-winning actor and Native American impersonator. I'm an accomplice to Indigenous people, and for the purposes of this video, you can think of me as their proxy. Hello. Hello, I'm Jim Fletcher, award-winning actor and reformed Native American impersonator. I'm an accomplice to Indigenous people. And for the purposes of this video, you can think of me as their proxy.
Much of the world is unprepared for the mounting threats of climate change. The effects of climate change may be irreversible, and billions of people could be affected. Global warming is affecting food and water shortages, economic livelihoods, and raising the risk of wars.
Are you doing it on purpose, Mr. Pollock? I didn't say action. I'm the one who says action. Native Indians think you're stealing their soul when you take a picture of them. Maybe they're onto something. What do you think, Hans?
Hello, I'm Jim Fletcher, award-winning actor and reformed Native American impersonator. The most Indian part of my costume was a horsetail. I did a dance, which I didn't know how to do. I'm an accomplice to Indigenous people. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm sorry. And for the purposes of this video, you can think of me as their proxy.
The winner is Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
Accepting the award for Marlon Brando and The Godfather is Kathleen Littlefield.
I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening. Very regretfully, cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being...
But before we get into that, I'd like to let you in on something that changed my life forever.
Ever since I've been working the program, I feel so much better.
What the NRO really did for me, it gave me a sense of purpose.
We can help. We can lend our gifts.
It's the best investment I've ever made in my life.
It opened up a whole new world for me.
I've learned to help without getting in the way.
And I don't have to do it alone. It is so much fun to have Indigenous friends and mentors.
There was this moment when everything kind of clicked.
For the first time, I have the ability to really have more of me in my life.
It's a beautiful thing, and you should just do it. Just do it.
This free introductory video, The New Red Order, Never Settle, will tell you what you need to know to take control of your life today.
Well, as the program continued, I started to sleep better. I had higher levels of energy. My work improved a lot.
I don't even feel guilt at all anymore.
I just felt much happier in general.
It's so reassuring to wake up in the morning and know that I'm making a difference helping repatriate land for Indigenous peoples.
It's something to feel good about.
This is the first time I know I have the tools to really change my life.
Remembering that we're all one allows us to grow and realize what the other is.
I've been able to access parts of myself that I didn't even know existed.
If more of us engage in this way, it could ripple outward and change everything about how we relate to one another.
It makes you a better you. That's what it means to me.
It's a whole new world.
They've given me a gift, and I can't wait to return it.
My reality's been reconfigured, and I've never been happier.
I enjoy working with the NRO. I enjoy how I feel after working with the NRO. And I look forward to repatriating all Indigenous land and life.
Start really living. Experience clarity. Act with confidence. Attract abundance. Be a part of the solution. Leave behind a better world. Never settle.
It's a story of support.
It's a story of mentoring.
It's a story of collective liberation.
We are encouraging each other,
Motivating each other.
so that we can be stronger together through knowledge.
The New Red Order, or NRO, is a public secret society dedicated to expanding Indigenous agency and achieving decolonization, which brings about the repatriation of Indigenous land and life. Well, what does that have to do with me or you? Are you a settler? Am I a settler? This is making me feel bad. Does it make you feel bad?
Yeah, a little bit, sure. Yeah, we took their land.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It's like heartbreaking. It's like a systemic problem, you know?
But I don't necessarily feel responsible.
No, I'm not responsible for it. Well, it was my ancestors. Yeah, we came and killed off a whole tribe. But it is what it is, right? Not much you can do. Yeah, it's a twisted world, that's for sure. Yeah.
What is settler colonialism? Settler colonialism is a distinct type of colonialism that functions through the replacement of indigenous populations with an invasive settler society that, instead of leaving, stayed.
Recognizing my status as a settler colonist, occupying stolen land, it felt pretty awful. Like, let's get this guilt trip out of the way.
I knew it wasn't my fault. I mean, I was born here, but I'm not a settler.
You know, it's the system, you know, it's politics. So, like, that's not me.
I didn't steal anyone's land.
What am I supposed to do? Is that my fault?
Have you ever seen the movie The Matrix? It's kind of like that.
Working in real estate investment is something I think about every day.
Once I started to see through settler colonial propaganda, I couldn't unsee it.
Buying, selling land, stolen land.
I was actively participating in an oppressive settler occupation, especially since I did pay taxes and I didn't actively support Indigenous communities.
I was devastated. My ancestors came here, took it unfairly, and that's something that I live with every day.
Native Americans were here. This was their house. I didn't come to steal your shit, okay? In fact, I was stolen, and I worked for free here. So I feel a little different than some of my compatriots in the NRO, because I don't really identify with the settler colonialist kind of perspective. It's just not really in my makeup. When I was a kid, a lot of African American kids liked to claim that they were Native American. I can't really tell whether it was because they wanted to be less black or because they wanted to be more Native American. But now, a lot of the pathology that went into that kind of attitude seems to be dissipating. So I even feel comfortable now acknowledging, for example, the relationship between African Americans and, say, Seminoles in Florida, and, you know, African Americans in the 10th Cavalry killing Apaches in Arizona. We're all part of this paradox, and we're all caught up in this. So it's just helpful when we can step back and sort of think about who we really are.
as the child of immigrant parents, it was unclear for me what my relationship to settler colonialism was. Like when you come from another country, it's really a kind of a mindfuck.
It's no secret that we are living through an unprecedented, profoundly unsettling time.
I'd like to talk to you about the end of our country and the end of the world.
The new Red Order saved me from myself. It's no secret that we are living through an unprecedented, profoundly unsettling time. Alienation, existential dread, divisiveness are pervasive. Environmental catastrophe, no longer merely an ominous possibility, is our contemporary reality. Economic inequality and civil unrest are fueling the rise of tribalism.
Political polarization, or tribalism, has reached a fever pitch.
This isn't tribalism as they have defined it. I don't know what is.
Tribalism, it's like the word du jour.
We are the red tribe, this is the blue tribe.
And it makes me feel tribal over my people.
If we don't make revolutionary changes at a radical pace, we are all a people without a future.
Now, the stakes have never been higher.
Without a future for Indigenous peoples, there's no future for the rest of us.
With the world's population ballooning and resources dwindling, humanity appears to be on the verge of devouring itself.
Sometimes I think this country's cursed.
Climate change.
Social media.
Police brutality.
Consumerism.
Wildfires.
Taxes.
Income inequality.
Lyme disease.
ISIS.
Death in general, so fucked up.
Earthquakes.
Alien abduction.
Big data.
Gentrification.
Mass shootings.
Uber pools.
The welfare state.
Surveillance capitalism.
It all makes it very hard to be optimistic about the future.
We're going to stay on the air for as long as possible. All we can say is what we've been repeating all morning.
Whether you're ready to accept it or not, an unveiling or apocalypse looms on the horizon.
I think the reason that I decided to join the NRO is that our world is ending.
Just living here, we're all part of the problem, and we all need to be part of the solution.
A new day is coming. The question is, how many of us survive once it gets here?
Apocalypsis. Uncover. Reveal. Disclose knowledge. It feels hopeless. I was hopeless. Until I learned that our apocalypse is unique, but not unprecedented.
Apocalypse? Oh, you mean opportunity.
Apocalypse? That's just another 3 to 4 syllable word.
I'm not really concerned about that anymore.
The NRO taught me that the apocalypse is just a paradigm shift. They lived through one, and so can I.
Indigenous people have already survived their own apocalypse, and if we play our cards right, they just might help us through our own.
It's the end of the new world, but now I know it's something to feel good about.
The apocalypse specialist at the NRO told me that the key to our survival is giving all of our land back to the Indigenous communities that it was stolen from. And I believe her.
I think there's a lot to learn, a lot a culture can learn from a culture. There's a kind of either-orness, it seems to me, that predominates philosophically in white culture. And if you think about what you can glean from being around Indigenous thinking, it's there's a lot of ambiguity in it all. You aren't either or, You are this both and. You are engaged in a lot of ways in a much more integrated way. And I think that's what I think the future should have for all of us. I think if we were smart, we'd listen. And perhaps one of the things I've learned most about being white in a native world is listening is a really interesting habit, not what white people are mostly used to. And that listening is what I see the future holding for all of us. If we only learn to do it, we might survive.
The end of a new world brings an entangled emergence of multiculturalism, neoliberalism, and decolonialism. Desires for indigenous knowledge increase, and enterprising settlers labor to extract this understanding as if it were a natural resource. But knowledge, you can't extract it quickly. It must be earned. I need to express to you that this is a lifelong process. It requires a willingness to be vulnerable and imperfect in front of others who will, with care and respect, help us come to see ourselves more fully. But you can't change your nature, your mode of consciousness, like changing your shoes. It is a gradual shedding. Years must go by, and centuries must elapse before you've finished. It's a long and half-secret process. There are stages. It will take time, psychic time, time being present. Be patient. It's a chronomorphic process, a transformative process, a key step towards decolonization. Decolonize. How can we decolonize? If we could, what would be left? To leave it independent or independently depends on how we divide ourselves. How can we decolonize ourselves? Especially if our existence is predicated on being a settler.
Give it back. 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 Give it back.
The repatriation of all Indigenous land, that's not realistic. That's not realistic.
This disturbing footage shows a man using an aerosol can to torture DMV.
But look at the state of reality. Do you want to be realistic? Do you want to live your life in a realistic way? I certainly don't.
These are not rhetorical questions meant as an abdication of responsibility, but instead an acknowledgement of reality. The incommensurability of this settler colonial reality calls for action. Action to commit crimes. Crimes against reality.
So what the NRO really did for me is give me the ability to create things that I imagined. So it kind of gave me like a sense of purpose.
What was really surprising to me was the simplicity of the techniques.
And obviously, if you're able to take things that you imagine and put them into reality, then you can actually live a life that you want to live.
It's not illegal, it's extra legal.
I understood. This is magic. This is la philosophie sauvage. Now I can create anything.
A decolonial act is inherently against the law. Other forms of decolonization are symbolic or metaphorical, acting to relieve feelings of guilt or responsibility without giving up land, power, or privilege, without having to change or commit to much at all. This sounds convenient, but what is required? To be committed? To help commit? To risk getting committed? What is an accomplice? Accomplice, a person who helps another commit a crime.
We're talking about the crime of stolen land. What crime am I an accomplice to? Crimes against reality.
Today, you are being invited to be part of something. Step into the role of an accomplice, to work alongside Indigenous people, to become a part of the community, of the collection.
I'm Sam. Hi, Sam. How you doing, guys? The first time I heard about Indians, probably either Peter Pan or The Indian in the Cupboard.
The voice of everybody deserves to be heard, and in fact, in hearing it, it's an enlightening and expanding experience for all of us.
Hi, everybody. My name's Ben.
Hi, Ben.
The first time I ever heard about Indians would have been when I found out the name of the town where I lived. The name of the town is Pasumsic, which means something, but I don't know what it means.
We custom fit settler participants with anonymized silicone masks, which temporarily gives them the freedom to express their innermost inappropriate desires towards indigeneity without fear of reprimand or repercussion. Findings are documented, presented, re-ingested, and enacted to explore strategies for achieving Indigenous futures.
I acknowledge that self-interest motivates my desire to help Indigenous peoples. I acknowledge my desire for indigeneity. I acknowledge that I have feelings of guilt, but my actions today define me.
3, capture. As a settler colonist, it's important to develop a consummate taste, a taste for the other, for the unknown, for the new. It's important to consume art. Art, especially the kind conjuring nostalgic memories, can relax you, can lubricate your voyage back to a primal confidence, to your intuition, to your privilege, to your influence, to be influenced. Among the new Red Order's many multifaceted initiatives, culture capture is a small speculative step toward rectifying the violence committed by museum archives and the settler colonial icons that guard them. It allows settlers to move through institutions and see familiar symbols with new perspective.
I never knew committing crimes against reality could feel so good.
Oh yeah, I remember culture capture.
The strangest thing is how much sense it actually makes.
I never expected a native organization to be so high-tech.
So great, because I actually get to help others make sense of it too.
Savage philosophy at its finest.
Posing as typical museum goers, accomplices gain access to objects in museum collections to spectrally liberate them. Captured back from the museum, they exist in a space where the virtual is conflated with the spiritual, and desires for the new confront desires for an irretrievable past, an anti-museum for an ongoing occupation.
Errors. Which errors offer the most advantages when the world has gone savage? The realist in the era of imperialism still thinks as savages do. And what savages do, above all, is to confuse signs with things.
Police in Connecticut are increasing patrols after vandals spray painted 2 statues, one in Middletown, another in New Haven.
The vandalism was posted online. Video shows a man striking the base of the monument with a sledgehammer while someone holds a sign next to it that reads, "Racism, tear it down," and another person narrates the video.
Back here at home, a Columbus statue in the capital city has also been targeted. You can see the red paint sprayed and splashed all over it.
The statue was covered to keep the graphic scene from the view of visitors.
That there is the Christopher Columbus statue that was vandalized yesterday. Now, police tell us what you see there is red paint. Now, we're not sure who did this, when they did this, or why, but this comes amid an ongoing debate over Confederate standards in the U.S. Just a few days ago,
Images that represent the settlement of this land unconsciously inform our inability to comprehend our settler reality. The presence of Indian bodies outside, made of marble, stone, and bronze, often signifies the presence of Indian bodies inside, made of bone, brain, hair, heart, and lung. These monuments conjure terrifying realities. Do you think these Indians are real or imaginary? Signs like these conjure realities and create national identities.
The society of statues is mortal. One day, their faces of stone crumble and fall to earth. This botany of death is what we call culture. And this is how we capture it.
It took some pretty bold culprits to pour what police are calling fake blood on the statue of Theodore Roosevelt outside the Museum of Natural History. The latest iconic monument to be desecrated during Mayor de Blasio's public debate about symbols of hate just happens to sit under the watchful eye of this NYPD surveillance camera.
I feel ashamed when I see it.
It's a horrible symbol of our time today when we are acting out in ways that are uncivil and impolite.
The statue, dedicated in 1936, features the former president astride a horse, a Native American on one side, an African on the other.
I empathize with people who are upset about things, but I don't think chucking paint is the way to do it.
Leftist groups have been demanding the statue's removal for months, saying Roosevelt, the former Rough Rider, former NYPD commissioner, former governor of New York, and former president, was a racist.
I just think that they should express their protest in a different way.
Vandals have also desecrated other monuments, including the statues of Christopher Columbus in Central Park and in Columbus Circle. Spokesman for both Mayor de Blasio and the museum insisted vandalism has no place in the public conversation about monuments now going on.
Okay, so thank you for your indulgence there. For that in-progress infomercial. I think that most recent cut was from this exhibition at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Detroit, where we had multiple instances of staging grounds, recruitment zones, to invite potential new members to emerge for and with the NRO. This also included a timeline depicting the emergence out of contradistinction from the Improved Order of the Red Men, with the GSD indicating the Improved Order of the Red Men's own time. A little history on the Improved Order of the Red Men really quickly. They did claim lineage from the Sons of Liberty, who claimed responsibility for the Boston Tea Party, and then went to include members such as Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, Richard Nixon. Didn't allow non-white people in until 1974. They're now headquartered in Waco, Texas. Their chief priorities are the respect for the American flag and the love of liberty. You can see in the background an installation of a newer piece. I'm just going to show a quick depiction here. This was The End of the Trail by James Earl Fraser, who was also the one responsible for the creation of the equestrian monument of Theodore Roosevelt in front of the American Museum of Natural History, which was actually just removed, I think maybe today, a couple days ago. I don't know, I have to check, I just saw that. It's been in process for a while. They promised to remove it about a year ago. Which is a different kind of salvaging. I think it's going to be transported to the Dakotas. So this video is a kind of different 3D animation. I'll just give a little sliver here, where these three monuments are then manipulated, transformed, and merge into each other, into a virtual no man's land. The other monument depicted was the Spirit of Transportation in Detroit. This was a capture from a photogrammetric capture manipulation output from the animated video in front of that end of the trail revisited. And here we're coming to the end, the very end. This is the depiction, a 3-channel depiction of Franz Boas and his attendant, which you saw a little bit of at the beginning, which was also connected to this Give It Back at the Audain Gallery. So beyond the necessary disruption of settler colonialism with the need to take back land for this storefront exhibition, we investigated, presented, and promoted another mode of return through actualized gestures of land being voluntarily released to Indigenous people. Employing videos in this real estate ethos, this unfolds to chart moments in a speculative future history of the movement. In our presentation of the examples, we took the moment to note internal resistance to giving back and the partial and sometimes questionable value of that gesture in each instance. However, in foregrounding voluntary practices and promises of land's return, the work offers a potential, if partial, attempt to undo settler colonialism by those who stand to benefit most from its upholding. Most recently, this is the Artist Space exhibition this spring, Feel at Home Here. We presented adjacent to the historical timeline of the emergence of the NRO, the flip side of a real estate office as a fun park travel agency. I'm just going through installation photos, another instantiation of their recruitment zone. One of the things that might happen at a New Red Order gathering called Informants Get Paid. In the same show downstairs, we have an underbelly to the promotion upstairs with a 2-channel film, Culture Capture, Crimes Against Reality, which I already showed a very brief sliver of, which is the 3D speculative dismantling of the Roosevelt Equestrian Monument, in addition to the end of the trail, showing the underbelly of settler colonial formation and representation still present, but perhaps soon to be removed. Well, now they were removed. Again, this is posited in some ways as a blank slate for activation. But we ask, what is it to feel home here? And I believe this is going to be the end. I can talk more about this project in questions, if you have any questions about any of the other materials. We'll say, if you'd like to join, you can visit fill out a questionnaire at newredorder.org or call our hotline at 1-888-NEW-RED-1. Thank you so much. So, I'm not sure the total time. I managed to go hour 10, hour 20, but if anyone has questions. Behind me are ads